Hey theater fans, I'm Dakota.
And I'm Jeff.
And we're the Theater Snobs.
Can I just say,
Hello!
trying to get Dakota to push the record button at the same time as me is a chore. I love you, Dakota.
It's always a problem. I love you more. Listen, anxious person and technology is a very difficult match. Okay?
Oh, is that what we're saying? Okay, I see.
Because I'm never ready enough. I'm never ready. We're on to go live.
Okay. All right. Live your life, sweetie pie. Live your life. We are live. We are back.
Long awaited.
And we have a lot to talk about today.
We have so much to talk about. Okay. We have been piling up our notes together about the new year of theater, and we have lots to discuss. So, part of coming out of the pandemic.
Oh, the pandemic still.
I know, but it has changed a lot of the landscape of what is acceptable and what is interesting to produce on stage. A couple of things, both on Broadway and off Broadway, have involved live streaming and TikTok and Zoom and storylines that involve that kind of stuff. So one of the things that I was reading about was a show called Fame Hungry at Soho Playhouse. It was previously at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
Oh, it was a Fringe show. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked a bit about Fringe festivals and kind of the different landscape. So that transferring over to a New York audience is interesting enough. But trying to live stream the entire performance on TikTok and also simultaneously have that live stream projected for the audience. I mean, there's a whole barrel of new kinds of technology and how we're consuming it. I don't know that I would have gone to see this show, but it's kind of an interesting feat to throw all of our everyday social media stuff together with theater. And also what a challenge it must have been to pivot when TikTok was banned that one day. So
that one day
that was like kind of a joke. Will it, won't it? But we know about the struggles of trying to live stream something, trying to have a recorded version available. It's kind of what's expected now as another way to consume this media. So it is interesting. And another play that we were talking about that was actually on Broadway is Eureka Day.
Ooh, hang on. Before you move on to Eureka Day, I feel like Fame Hungry almost borders more performance art than traditional theater.
That is
which
true.
Is interesting because you see things like All In with its rotating cast of big stars is selling itself as a theatrical experience, and Fame Hungry is selling itself as a theatrical experience. And this is really, I think these are perfect examples of more performance art than like traditional theater.
That's true. And I think for a while, I'm kind of happy that you made that distinction, because for a while I don't think we were really seeing that. And there is a lot more weird, out there, not cookie cutter stuff that people love to go and consume, and that's what makes New York so different and fun. So
right.
I encourage that. The other show that I think is also bringing a lot of this technology, much like, Dear Evan Hansen did, having a lot of comments and posts and different things projected straight on the screen for the audience to see, is Eureka Day. This was written before the pandemic, but I think it got some edits when it was produced post-pandemic, just because it would make a little more sense and resonate with people a little more. Because it is talking about a day school in which there's a head of school and a board kind of sitting around in a meeting on Zoom in front of a laptop with parents at home talking about the super woke vaxxers against the anti-vaxxers.
Oh my gosh, for real?
Yeah, the policies at a private school. So, I mean, there's not much to the premise other than that they're all sitting in what looks like a library. And the head of school is on his laptop. And behind him are all of the, vitriolic comments from parents back and forth fighting on Zoom. But it is kind of what was going on during that time. So to see the actors doing their thing live and then to be watching and reading and streaming through all the comments as they're happening live, It's kind of an interesting premise and very relatable if you work at a school.
Did you see it?
I did not get a chance to see it, but the I would have liked to take my entire my entire leadership team at school to it, and just say, does this seem familiar to you?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, do you, because you work for a private school, do you feel like that's something that you guys are dealing with? Like, do you deal with a lot of parents who are refusing to vaccinate their kids and things like that?
During the time of COVID, I mean, all the vaccines before that you're mandated to get to enter into a school, somehow those seemed like, okay, yeah, we have to do those things. That makes sense. But then once we got into COVID and it was like a new one, there was all this debate that opened up. So there were even testing kids, because we had to test kids for COVID every 2 weeks in order for them to be okay to, stay in school. And during some of those big spikes, we had to close down or go back to remote learning for a while. So parents were upset on both sides all the time. So I do understand.
It's interesting. I feel like America gets amnesia very easily because we got out of COVID because of vaccines. Like, before the vaccine is when we were doing remote school and when we were doing no one was allowed to gather in public places. After the vaccine is when COVID started to trickle away out of our lives. And it's so funny to me that people are, like, seem to forget that.
Absolutely. Yep. We love science.
I just don't get it.
Yep.
Well, we live and we move on. Oh, speaking of living and moving on.
I know a lot of today's chat, Jeff, is about off-Broadway and the landscape of off-Broadway changing. And something that was so beloved in New York for so long was Stomp.
Oh, Stomp. I loved Stomp.
That was for 30 years running at the Orpheum Theater, which I actually just saw something else at recently, and I was like, oh, this is depressing.
It's not Stomp. What's the point?
I know. And the Blue Man Group, which was here for over 34 years. That's a huge change, because these were things that as tourists to New York, these were kind of like staples that you would lead people to, or like these are like those undercover gems, and instead of just going to see Wicked or Phantom, there are also these really other cool, interesting things that are just innately New York. Mm-hmm. So the Blue Man Group is kind of what you were saying again about like more of performance art.
And now the innately New York is TikTok.
I mean, this was something so weird. I can't even imagine these guys getting... Now, some of the founders were not in it the entire 34 years. There were different actors and performers that came in and out.
Oh, yeah. They have Blue Man Group teams all over the world.
Yeah, and they're, like you said, they were touring. They were in different cities, having different residencies. I mean, but it's just such a weird concept. Like, these guys get completely painted in blue every day to play, like, PVC pipes and just do weird slapstick comedy and, like... But there's something about this that is just, when you find something that resonates with an audience or that engages them in a different way, there's something interesting about that has like lasting power. I know we talk a lot about how, oh, this thing was on Broadway for 30 years, like give someone else a chance. But I also on the flip side of that, think that some of these underproduced off-Broadway things that are so unique and different, I get sad when they close after 30 years because there's just, I don't know how to explain it, but it's a different show every night and different audiences over generations.
The difference between a Broadway show running for 30 years and an off-Broadway show running for 30 years is the off-Broadway show becomes a fabric of the city that it's in.
Correct.
Right? It's not just attracting theater goers. It's not like sucking the air out of the room. It is an off-Broadway show is really...
Yep.
It's like a theme park show, right? It's like a show that is part of this. It's like the Mousetrap in the West End, right? It's a small, tiny little theater, and it's a tourist attraction in a lot of ways, but it's also a fun night out for locals, you know? Whereas
Right.
Broadway is almost too expensive to be that.
Right.
Like, it's not, you're not going to see, oh, let's go, it's Friday night, let's go see Wicked. No, because Wicked tickets are like $150, you know? So these smaller shows are more accessible and more part of the fabric of the city.
I completely agree with you, and I hope we see some more of that. But I kind of think that this is the end of an era of that type of performance and that mentality of performance. But we might see the rise of something interesting.
You know why, right? You know why it's the end of that, right?
Why?
The rent is too damn high.
Oh well, that's definitely an issue. That's for sure.
I think my favorite coffee mug is broken.
Oh,
There's a crack. Ah! What is the world coming? I am here to talk
these
about.
things make us sad.
I am here to talk about the difference between an understudy, an alternate, a standby, and a swing. We have heard a lot about these terms lately because I think it's becoming more prevalent, but I think also as actors want time off for things like funerals and weddings and life and mental health,
Absolutely.
you're starting to see more of the swings and the alternates and the standbys and the understudies taking center stage. And famously, a lot of people who start in this role end up taking over when, a current performer leaves. So, are you ready, Dakota? Crash course.
I'm so ready.
Okay. So, first thing is an understudy, okay? An understudy is usually part of a show's wider ensemble. So, they have another bit role or they're a dancer or something, and they have memorized all of a principal's tracks, lines, blocking, songs, if it's a musical, and all of these things. And if a principal actor calls out, they're usually the one who's stepping into the role. So, it's Tuesday morning and the performer playing Elphaba is sick. It's usually the understudy who's stepping in. And then
Right.
that leaves a hole in their track, and we'll talk about that in a second. But famous understudy story, and I knew this but didn't know the details of it. Sutton Foster, who we love,
Yes.
was rocketed to fame after beginning her career in understudy tracks. She was an understudy and replacement in Grease, Les Mis, Annie, The Scarlet Pimpernel, and then she was hired as the understudy for Thoroughly Modern Millie because the role of Millie was originally supposed to go to Kristen Chenoweth,
Huh.
who then ended up turning it down because she got a sitcom role. And then it went to Erin Dilly, who ended up leaving the production during the rehearsal process. And so they bumped Sutton Foster up to full time. And she got rave reviews during the out of town tryout at La Jolla. And now is one of Broadway's biggest stars. So I didn't know the whole details of that, but perfect story of how understudying can launch a career or, can
Wow.
be a good paycheck. So, number one, understudy. Okay. Now, let's talk about a swing. So, that ensemble person who is now taking on the lead role because the performer is out, a swing steps into their role.
Right.
A swing is essentially a standby for understudies.
They have to know a lot.
Whenever an understudy has to cover a role, a swing steps in, and a swing typically knows multiple tracks within a show. So they'll know because every show has multiple tracks, and a swing knows multiple roles in a show. So that swing can step in for the ensemble person who is sick, or for the ensemble person who's an understudy who's going on in a lead role. A swing will step in. The work that swings do is insane.
I would never.
It is absolutely insane. There was a story of a Kinky Boots swing who covered 17 different tracks.
That's nuts.
So, like, they knew 17 different roles within the same show.
God.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And now you're getting things.
I would never be able to.
Have you heard of a universal swing?
No.
So, a universal swing is someone who is flown to a different city to cover a
Oh
role
my.
on tour or in a sit down
What?
production or whatever. So, it's
This is
just
insane.
mind boggling.
I could never figure that out. Nope.
Right? Like, swings are insane, insanely talented people.
We love them.
And so they know this is what blows my mind the most is like, let's say there's partner dancing. They know both partners. And whether they are covering, depending on which side they're covering, they know exactly what it's crazy. And they have notes and they're humans and but it's crazy to me just how much swings do and how important swings are to a show. Because if anything happens, the swing goes on.
Right.
Like,
right.
If someone is sick in the middle of a show, a swing can go on. If someone is, like, it's just crazy in the number of situations that a swing can go on. So, that's a swing, right? So now we have understudies.
And how little is known or like publicized about them, and they're so vital.
Oh, I know. They're insane. They are the heartbeat. But then they're also usually dance captains as well.
Right.
So they're usually doing or stunt choreography captains too. So they are usually doing another role in addition to covering multiple roles. Whew. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So understudies and swings. There we go. Next is alternates. So an alternate. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, when we had the likes of Ethel Merman and Mary Martin and all these great dames of musical theater who refused to perform in matinee performances. Someone had to do it. And this, an alternate, that's an alternate. So when a star or a lead is out of a role sort of on a regular basis, the alternate is stepping in. So right now, in Sunset Boulevard, Mandy Gonzalez is the alternate for Nicole Scherzinger. And I don't know exactly how many shows they do, but like, if Nicole is not doing a Tuesday, Mandy is doing the Tuesday. If Nicole is not doing a matinee,
right,
Mandy's doing the matinee. So Mandy is the alternate. It's usually for roles that are very, very difficult. So, for example,
huge, yeah.
Sunset Boulevard. And it really depends on performers, right? And, but there are also performers who refuse to have alternates. Like Bette Midler, when she did Hello, Dolly, didn't have an alternate.
Interesting. Well, even when we saw Tina, the Tina Turner musical, the Wednesday matinee and the Sunday matinee and maybe one other lesser exciting evening performance were the alternate. But the alternate has to be just as fabulous as the main performer.
Oh, for sure. And
yeah.
they are. They always are, right?
Right.
But and also the understudies too. I mean, like when we saw Lempicka, and I was so excited to see Eden, but then the understudy was on and I forget her name, but she was fabulous. Like,
yeah.
It really bothers me when people are like, oh, the understudy. Like, open your mind a little bit.
Right.
These people work just as hard, and these are the future, right? Like, imagine seeing Sutton Foster as an understudy in Grease all those years ago.
And you're like, oh, this little no-name person. Yeah.
And now Sutton Foster is who she is. Right? Like, come on. That's how how legends are made, people. How legends are made. So I always love seeing an understudy, and I get disappointed if I'm there to see a specific star. Like, there are people, right? I love Eden Espinosa. I love Annalee Ashford. There's people who I do go to see.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna like walk away fuming if the understudy is on, because it's just dumb. So we have understudies, we have swings, we have alternates. The last is a standby. This is the job, let me tell you. Standby is the way to go. So unlike alternates, a standby doesn't have like a weekly schedule. They sometimes are scheduled ahead of time, but not usually. And it's not really predictable for them on when they're going in. So a standby is someone who will step in for a principal role should something happen in the middle of the show. So let's say someone's sick and they think they can do it and then they can't do it. Or something happens and they all of a sudden can't go on for whatever reason. A standby is the person who steps right in. And it's interesting because these people just have to be within a certain geographical location of the theater whenever the performance is going on. So I remember when I worked at Wicked, the standby for Elphaba just had to be within 3 blocks of the theater.
Wow.
So whenever a show was happening, she had to be within 3 blocks of the theater. And I think I worked for Wicked for just over a year, and I think the standby went on twice. So that's why I say this is the job, right? Like you're covering a principal role, which is difficult, but you literally are getting paid, and you just have to be within 3 blocks of the theater as long as a show is happening. And one of the most famous Wicked ones is when Idina fell.
Yep.
Just before her last few weeks of performances, the trapdoor opened too soon, and she backed into it and broke some ribs. And if you've seen Wicked, you know that's like the last 5 minutes of the show.
Yeah.
So they called the standby in, and this is when it was still new. So like makeup techniques and things were not as quick as they are now. And the standby came in and literally did the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was actually Shoshana Bean, who is super famous now on her own, like you're saying. So
yep.
Yeah, you never know when crazy things like that are going to happen.
Yeah.
So we appreciate all these folks.
Yeah. So when you go to a show and you see an understudy, or it's a standby, or it's an alternate, just
love them.
Love them. They deserve your love too.
We appreciate all of you guys. You're what makes up the fabric of our quilt.
Did you see The Prom?
I saw parts of the movie. No, I did not see it.
So one of the interesting things I learned about The Prom is, and this is the first time I was aware of this, sometimes when shows have multiple people out for vacation, they'll just do the show with fewer people. They're just like, okay, skeleton crew, here we go. And The Prom used to do this all the time, apparently. So like if a certain number of people are out, it's more so for musicals, but like a certain number of people are out and they don't have enough swings, or they don't have enough people to cover everybody, then they'll be like, okay, well this track just won't happen, like we'll just eliminate this track for the show.
That sounds nice.
I think I've heard it happening on Kinky Boots as well, but it's interesting, that they're like, okay, well, we'll just do the show without this track. It's fine. Don't worry.
Just eliminate these characters. It'll be okay.
It's fine. No big deal. It's fine. Guys, you can cover that line. Yep. Okay, we're good.
I mean, that kind of sounds like stuff that happens, in college when someone like randomly walks
totally
off and you're like, okay, they're not coming back from the intermission. They just hit a teacher.
Here we go. All right.
What will we do? Just like you said, we'll cover this line. Okay, great. But yeah, you know what? The show must go on.
Yes, it must. Yes, it
That kind of leads me into...
That is my TED Talk.
January is typically a pretty low time for tourism and low time for Broadway. A lot of things are closing or getting ready to open.
It's festival season.
It is. So that's kind of where the off-Broadway rise in January ends up happening, because there's a lot of... there's the Frigid Festival, the Under the Radar Festival. There's just a lot of other things going on while Broadway is kind of gearing up and ready to come back for tourists in those warmer months.
And one of those festival shows this year, by the Target Margin Theater and the NYU Skirball co-production, is a reimagining of Showboat.
Ooh.
That so famous first book musical, right? By Oscar Hammerstein II and Jerome Kern. They've rechristened it Showboat a River, and it is taking a look at Showboat, which just recently entered into the public domain, through a modern lens, which is interesting because, theater and musical theater has a history of playing down different ethnicities and races in inappropriate ways. And Showboat was a show that had an all black ensemble. But also it was one of the first shows that where a black character was sort of a lead and seen in a sympathetic way. So there's a lot of history behind Showboat, and one of the music directors said Showboat still has questions to ask and has not fully answered them. I think those questions are why every time it's produced, there's some kind of rewrite, some sort of editing, and the idea it poses are not done yet. They're not wrapped up in a tight little bow. So there's still so much more to explore in Showboat, and that was Dion McLean Freeney, one of the co-music directors and vocal arrangers of this production. And I think that's what's magical about theater. You know, you can work on something and see it through an entirely different lens than someone else. And you can revisit stories and learn something that you didn't know before. I'm working on a production of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe right now. And I have learned a lot more about that story and C.S. Lewis specifically through this production. And it's changed my view on the Narnia stories, I think, a little bit in a positive way. And that's why theater is so magical, because you can look at the same story through a different lens or look at the same story through the lens of someone else. And you can learn and you can grow from it. And I think that our world needs that right now.
I agree with that. We could do a whole episode on Showboat,
We could.
but I'm excited to see companies and starting to put.
Well, you can't see this one. It closed January 26th. You missed your chance.
No, I'm just saying I was excited to read about this, I guess, and to see that folks are taking advantage of that. Once a play goes into the public domain, what can we modernize about it? Like you're saying, what can we learn from it? And there was a lot of progressive firsts, let's say, that happened with Showboat, but like that music director said, it also leaves you a lot of questions and a lot of new interpretations, and how does this work affect us in today's society? So cool that we're bringing it to a new audience. And something we spoke about last episode, you had mentioned, Jeff, that the Tony Kaiser Theater, that's actually right across the street from me at work. It was owned by Second Stage Theater. You had said we were losing that. It is being taken over by a for-profit company called Seaview. And Seaview is, I wouldn't say rising to fame, but definitely doing more. They are producing the new Romeo and Juliet right now.
I think they had something to do with Rachel Chapkin and Haiti.
I really am. This article talks a tiny bit about a young guy, only 32 years old, Greg Noble, who's, I guess, kind of the owner, the main, the head person in charge, I guess, at Sea Life. I'm not exactly sure how he got all of this money to be doing these big things so early and so young. But right before COVID, Seaview was involved with this show that I believe started at the Public, Seawall A Life, which was with Jake Gyllenhaal. And then they worked on Slave Play, which got a ton of, so that probably helped them get a ton of exposure and catapult them forward a little. Okay. I mean, these are not no-name things. So Seaview is taking over the Tony Kaiser Theater, and it's going to be renamed, obviously. I think it's just Studio at Seaview for the time being. But the difference between a nonprofit ownership and a for-profit ownership, when we had gone to the Museum of Broadway, we'd seen, out of the Broadway houses, who are owned by which companies and conglomerates and whatnot. And there were very few that were nonprofit companies. So now there's fewer. But
Yeah.
again, we are seeing that, like you said, because of the rents and because of all the rising costs, things are gonna have to be done differently. So
Right.
I'm interested to see how this changes what they produce in this theater now that
Yes,
Seaview is
true. True
there.
story. Well, and I think that, theaters, I think especially in New York, theater spaces change hands and fun things grow out of that. And, it is what it is. Okay, I am here to tell you about shows that are opening for the 2024-2025 season. Well, what's remaining of it. So, first,
What are we seeing?
oh, please, what are we seeing? Everything, hopefully. First up, Operation Mincemeat. Operation Mincemeat is transferring from the West End. It has been running there for 2 years and is still going. Billed as the acclaimed Olivier Award winning musical about an outrageous covert operation in World War II. That's all we get.
All right.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Previews started February 15th and it opens March 20th.
Woo.
Next up, the Buena Vista Social Club. It
Haha.
is a musical based on the legendary Grammy Award winning album, and it is coming to Broadway after premiering at Off Broadway's Atlantic Theater Company. And it previews February 21st, opening March 19th. Next up, Othello.
Othello.
Ready? Say it again. Othello. Been done before.
Yep.
This one stars Denzel Washington, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Molly Osborne. It previews February 24th and opens March 23rd. Denzel Washington will play Othello, and Jake Gyllenhaal will play Iago in Shakespeare's tragedy of jealousy and deception. Coming to the Helen Hayes, with previews February 25th and opening March 17th, Purpose. Brandon Jacobs Jenkins' latest play arrives on Broadway after its sold-out premiere at Chicago's Steppenwolf Theater Company.
I have heard a lot about these that you're talking about so far, so a lot of anticipation.
That's good, right? Purpose is directed by Felicia Rashad. That's right. Okay, I remember.
Oh, I'm even more excited. Yes, yes, yes. I forgot about that.
There you go. That's why. That name popped in my head. Okay, next we're getting another revival of Glengarry Glen Ross. Whoopee.
Woo!
Preview March 10th, opening March 31st. Of course, it's Glengarry Glen Ross, so it's a starry cast. Kieran Culkin, Bob Odenkirk, Bill Burr, Michael McKean, Donald Webber Jr., Howard W. Overshone, and John Puricello. Written by David Mamet. Directed by Patrick Marber. David Mamet's classic play about the cutthroat real estate agents returns to Broadway this spring. Isn't this like the 30th time this has been redone?
I've seen a lot of posters about this. Yeah. But hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Do we really need another revival of
anything?
Well, of this. Come on. Al Pacino and Bobby Cannavale were in it just
let's go see it
few
again.
years ago.
We have to see
really
the same
need
shit,
more?
different day. Woo!
David Mamet, go away. You can go the way of Andrew Lloyd Webber. Sorry.
He's on your list.
Next up is The Picture of Dorian Gray. Previews March 10th, opening March 27th. It is a one-person show starring Sarah Snook. And Sarah Snook plays 26 characters in this adaptation of Oscar Wilde's classic novel.
Oh, this is going to be insane. I see, this is at least different. A real reimagining. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, very real. And for the lighter fare, Boop, the Betty Boop musical, starts previews March 11th and opens April 5th. This one did an out-of-town tryout in Chicago.
No.
And it's the latest Jerry Mitchell adventure. We'll see what happens.
Good Lord. I don't need this nonsense, but whatever.
Well, Annie was based on a comic, and look what happened there. Who knows? Maybe this is headed for greatness.
We hate Annie. Fuck Annie.
Smash.
No.
Coming to the Imperial Theater. First preview March 11th, opening April 10th. This one has Robin Herder, Brooks Ashmanskas. Oh, I said that wrong. Brooks Ashmanskas, Krista Rodriguez, John Bellman, Christine Nielsen, Carolyn Bowman, Jacqueline B. Arnold, Bella Coppola, and Casey Garvin. This is Susan Stroman. It's based on the TV series depicting the creation of the fictional Marilyn Monroe musical Bombshell. I always thought that they should have just done the actual musical Bombshell. It was more interesting to me.
Yeah,
But
see,
anyway,
why don't they friggin' hire us to give the ideas, man? This is ridiculous.
we could be EGOTs one day.
Yeah.
One day, Jeff and Dakota, EGOTs, number 20,
20 and 21.
Next up, Good Night and Good Luck. This is George Clooney reprising on stage. Come on. He's reprising on stage his 2005 film. Really? Do we need to see this? Do we need to see this?
I also think
It is about Edward R. Murrow's television crusade against Senator Joseph McCarthy. And it previews March 12th and opens April 3rd.
Oh man, McCarthyism. What another knee slapper. This is going to be hilarious.
You're gonna rush to see Baby Clooney?
Dude, let's watch the communism and the black, what do you call that? The blacklisting? Yes. Oh, this sounds great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's where we are now, right?
This is...
Sorry, no politics.
Yeah. Well...
The Last 5 Years, starring Nick Jonas and Adrian Warren, Jason Robert Brown, musical about two New Yorkers falling in and out of love, coming to Broadway for the first time.
Yes. See, this existed
I'm here
solely as like a cult off-Broadway, everyone loved it thing. Let's see.
Well, Jason Robert Brown has a huge cult following.
Yeah. And when his stuff transfers, sorry to be a skeptic, but when his stuff transfers to Broadway, it usually does not last very long. Well, he usually, like, this is why I'm saying, like, sometimes we should be happy with just being, like, an off-Broadway success or something. Like, we don't always have to transfer.
Right. And this is that line of artistically good and commercially successful.
Correct.
Right? His stuff is usually very artistically good, not always commercially successful.
Yes, like I'm thinking The Bridges of Madison County, which we were like, yay, so excited, loving new things. And the public was like, nope, we want to see the old crap again. So yeah, you know.
Songs for a New World.
We like grew up on that stuff. Like, I used to sing that stuff all the time. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you know what? I'm going to try to see it while it's open.
I mean, you won't be able to because Nick Jonas is in it. So.
Oh, yeah. That's true. That's true.
Next up, John Proctor is the Villain. Previews March 20th, opening March 14th. A new comedy about a high school English class questioning the classic play, The Crucible.
Yeah.
This sounds fun. This play has been performed in regional theaters across the country.
We love The Crucible. And we love questioning people.
Stephen Sondheim's Old Friends. Previews March 25th, opening April 8th. I would pay money to watch Bernadette Peters and Lea Salonga on the same stage. The hit West End tribute to the late Stephen Sondheim comes to Broadway, starring Broadway legends. Yes, it does. Floyd Collins. This is the new Jeremy Jordan piece. It is previewing March 27th, opening April 21st. Lincoln Center Theater will present the Broadway debut of the award-winning off-Broadway musical based on the true story of a man trapped in a cave.
Yeah, the man trapped in the cave part is a hard sell, but Jeremy Jordan is an easy sell.
Yeah, there we are.
Whew.
Interesting. Okay. Just in Time previews March 28th, opening April 23rd. So, like, that week, there's something opening almost every day. But, okay.
That's Jonathan Groff, right?
Starring Jonathan Groff, directed by Alex Timbers. Jonathan Groff plays beloved singer Bobby Darin in a new musical that transforms the Circle in the Square Theater into an immersive nightclub. That's been done before.
Whew. Oh, yeah. In that space, for sure.
And
there's a lot to see, people.
Opening the day before... Previews March 28th, opening April 22nd. Stranger Things, The First Shadow. It's the prequel to the hit Netflix series, Stranger Things, and it's coming to Broadway, and it's been running in the West End for a long time.
Wow. Okay, so guys, in this new year, go out and see at least one of these things. There's so much.
Oh, wait, there's 3 more.
Oh, my God.
I have 3 more. Yeah. Uh-huh. Later that week, previews April 1st, opening April 27th. A new musical based on Josefina Lopez's 1993 play, Real Women Have Curves. Also inspired a 2002 movie, and now a 2023 musical that premiered at Cambridge's American Rep Theatre. Next up, Pirates the Penzance musical. Previewing April 4th, opening April 24th. This is the Gilbert and Sullivan classic operetta being brought to life on Broadway for the first time in over 40 years in a new jazz-influenced adaptation.
Ooh.
Okay. Adaptation by Rupert Holmes, directed by Scott Ellis, starring Ramin Karimloo, Jinx Monsoon, David Hyde Pierce, Nicholas Barash, Preston Truman Boyd, and Samantha Williams. Could be fun.
Very good.
Last one, ready?
Ba-dum-ba-dum.
Another off-Broadway transfer, Dead Outlaw.
Woo!
Previews April 12th, opening April 27th, the David Yazbek and Eric De La Pena musical with a book by Itamar Moses. A musical about the bizarre true story of outlaw turned corpse turned celebrity Elmer McCurdy. It premiered off-Broadway at Audible's Minetta Lane Theatre in March 2024.
I love that Audible owns that theater.
Yeah, isn't it great?
Taken over.
As the corporations come in.
So, wow. This is what we have to look forward to, friends, before the Tonys. All of these amazing
Wait, what's
things.
the Tony deadline? Do you know?
I thought it was the end of April usually. Like the very end. That's why there's like always like 10 things that open that last week. Just to like get in the cutoff.
I found the other one. Ready? Influencer Trisha Paytas.
Oh, okay. I've heard about her, yes.
Big Broadway dream. Played at the St. James Theatre on February 3rd. I saw clips. I don't know how this woman got a Broadway musical. Or a Broadway anything. But she did. Somebody paid for it, and apparently it sold out, so she made her money.
We're Theater Snobs audience. We are confused by many things that get money and backing and funding.
I don't even know.
Confused by the things that don't get backing and money sometimes and support. So
also confusing. Our president is the executive director of the Kennedy Center now.
Yeah.
And with that,
the
National Endowment for the Arts.
National Endowment for the Arts, as you know, just very briefly and vaguely, any diversity, equity, and inclusion things, which seems pretty broad, initiatives, are not supported anymore. So National Endowment for the Arts has given out grants to certain groups that may support people of color or women or a plethora of other groups people with disabilities that count as DEI. It's sad that even women as a gender is
right.
Diversity, equity, inclusion, but basically lots of people are worried about the funding they were promised and or applying for new grants, and there's a lot of compliance pieces that are going into accepting this federal funding now too, because of what theater you want to produce or what kinds of projects you want to work on. If it's deemed by these executive orders as to not be
in line with what they want.
In line with them, yeah, aligned with just the two genders that we've announced and all this other crap. They're either going to be shut down. I don't know what's going to happen, really. The
National Endowment for the Arts is the only publicly funded...
high profile.
Well, I guess that's not entirely true.
Yeah.
Many other countries publicly fund arts. And the National Endowment for the Arts is one of the ways the U.S. publicly funds arts. And typically, they are able to choose what projects they fund sort of independently of politics and all of that kind of stuff. And it turns out that is changing.
And even what you said about, and this is really a crash course in all this because we don't want to get ourselves heated and angry on this podcast, but we are quite worried about the status of theater as we know it in this country. And even what you just said about our president being now in charge of the Kennedy Center, where theater exists in our lovely capital. A children's production called Finn. It was commissioned to actually be put on there, and now that's been pulled, and they are claiming it's for financial reasons, but it was a like love and accept everyone kind of story about fish and sharks, mind you. And that's
But isn't it?
I think it has like a
It's
gay
it's about the creator of Doc McStuffins.
it's just like it's sort of ridiculous that we can't even have a play to teach children to love everyone and to be tolerant. That's got to be pulled. So I'm a little discouraged by our friend, and I'm hoping that some random other happy things happen so that we can share some more exciting news with you.
Well, and I think we just need to read between the lines. A Kennedy Center spokesman said that the cancellation of the Finn tour was purely financial, which just isn't true. Like
Right.
it ran at the Kennedy Center from November 22nd to December 23rd. It's been nominated for a Helen Hayes Award, and it's an acclaimed children's musical by the guy who created Doc McStuffins. Like it's not, it's one of those things that just watch what you're being told, because it seems we've entered a time where we are not being told the full
And we
story.
love to tell you the full story here. So we don't play around.
Theater snobs will always tell you the full story. And on that note, good night and goodbye.
Good luck. Good night. Auf Wiedersehen. We love you.
The Theater Snobs podcast is part of Chill Bucket Productions. Find us on the web at www.chillbp.com.
And follow us on Instagram at Theater Snobs. That's theater, TRE, snobs.